Stick around. My name is Kevin Murdoch. I'm the mayor of Oak Bay, and we're calling to order the special council meeting of July 29th. As we do this, we just like to acknowledge at the start of our meetings that we hold our meetings in the traditional territories of the Coast and Straits Salish people, specifically the Lekwungen people known today as the Songhees and the Esquimalt nations. And just honoring that the work we do touches on both the lands and the adjoining waters, which have been stewarded for time immemorial by those peoples. Up next, we have approval of the agenda. I just have to make a point. There was in the phrasing of the agenda, it's a little bit mislabeled. Only 3.4, which is a zoning amendment, 00051 is subject to public input. That's just the procedural piece on there. I think that's correct, is it not, Ms. Williams? Okay. So I don't know if it actually requires an amended change, but basically with that clarification, we'll just have a motion to approve the agenda. Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Item 3 on the agenda, section 3, item 3.1. We just have a rise and report. We can just move the rise and report. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Then we move to 3.2, and this is the central part of this meeting, which is the Settler Indigenous Journey, a little bit of a preview. We have Mark Albany here as well as Robert Taylor. Sarah Taylor is not able to join us tonight, but we're here to do a but I want to take the opportunity to thank you both for coming here today and doing this little preview. I know that this is work underway and much appreciated. Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm really pleased this evening to be able to introduce you to the team that I've been working with for the last 10 months to develop an opportunity for yourselves, for Chief and Council from the Songhees and Chief and Council from the Esquimalt nations, to share a journey through Oak Bay's history and learn about each other's cultures and way of life. In 2022, you'll recall as a council, you identified truth and reconciliation as a priority pillar and requested that staff provide some opportunities to offer training sessions for staff and council to increase awareness of Indigenous culture and history in the area. So responding to that direction, we've offered online training opportunities for council. We've attended some Indigenous drum making sessions, things of that nature. And today you'll see a sneak preview of the full journey that's going to be, we're hoping to host it in September with the 3 bodies. Today, 2 of the team who've developed the tour are here to present, co-present the preview to you, and I have the absolute honor to introduce you to Mark Albany of the Songhees Nation, and Mark is an Indigenous facilitator here this evening, and of course Robert Taylor, our Oak Bayan, who is a settler facilitator here today to present this. And as you said, unfortunately, Sarah was unable to attend today. She had an engagement that she just could not move, and she really did want to be here. I just wanted to note that when we prepared our agenda, I identified this team and Sarah as well as a task force. And I just want to clarify that because in local government, task force has a very specific meaning. And so I might have confused some members of council with that. So I just wanted to clarify that this is a staff-led working group, a group that was selected by myself as CAO, the project lead on this project. And so I was really fortunate to be able to recruit these 3 wonderful folk to advance this work for council and work through this journey for you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark and Robert and allow them to take you through the journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Williams. And I just want to point out, I know we're kind of a formalized setup here, but we're just looking forward to this conversation, and hopefully it's a welcoming space. So if you have any questions or anything you need to ask, please go ahead and do so as well. So welcome.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. I'm used to being in court. I used to work as a court worker. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for receiving us and allowing us to do this presentation. What we're going to ask, if it's possible, to forego some of the formalities and protocols for this presentation, as this will allow us for a better flow of information back and forth, and it will also allow us to freely just ask you questions, and because there's a couple questions we want to ask as we go through here. without the formalities. And this will give you a bit more of an accurate understanding of what our tour is going to be like. So,
Absolutely. We're happy to just suspend our procedure pieces and have that. I don't think I need a motion to that effect, do I? No. So we'll just treat it reasonably informally tonight. Please continue.
thank you very much. I appreciate that. This slideshow is going to be narrated by the both of us. We've been working hard on this. And so, as I said, we will be posing some questions. And thank you for agreeing upon that. I really, really appreciate that. The questions that we have are not designed to embarrass, belittle, or detract from the job which you have. These are part of the format of the tour. And the reason why is because we're using questions to stimulate thinking and question historical facts. Right? So no offense is intended by any of the questions we ask. Right? So we're going to start with this wonderful place here that is called Oak Bay. And with that, I turn it over to my great and fellow learned colleague here.
Thank you.
He's taught me so much.
And again, thank you to Mayor and Council for first initiating this whole concept and for receiving our update tonight. Over the past numerous weeks working with Mark, I have changed from an Oak Bay resident who had probably a greater degree of knowledge on Indigenous issues, perhaps, to a person who has a great deal more knowledge, but more importantly, a great deal more understanding. And of course, there's a difference between pure knowledge and actually feeling and understanding. And so this is really big because of the mentoring from Mark. And it's been for me, it's been a very successful journey. So I'm extremely enthusiastic. If someone as old and worn out as I am can be turned around and motivated by Mark, then there is hope for the project. So what we have up here, of course, is what could be the logo for Oak Bay. Everyone knows it. Everyone loves it. Everyone's volunteered there, served there, eaten there, had coffee, milled around. It's a meeting place. It is probably the most famous icon in Oak Bay. And so, of course, it is Oak Bay, right? It's right on the beach. So here's Oak Bay. Now, if we... And we know the beach. This is probably the most famous part of Oak Bay. We know all of this. The original tea room, just out of interest, it opened apparently in 1915. And in that very small modern photograph, you can see at the bottom, that 3-story condominium building, that is where the tea room stood. It was demolished in 1945, and then after a hiatus of 2 years, thanks to Reeve Murdoch, in 1947, a shack was put up by Kiwanis, and then 2 years later, the current building. But if you can see on that the modern photograph, the distance between the beach and the buildings. There's a seawall and a sidewalk and a road, another sidewalk, gardens and fences and big walls, and then the buildings. But if you look at the old 1919 photograph, the beach runs right up to the buildings. Everyone's familiar with this one, right? A map of the original landowners in Oak Bay, and when the land was divided up in the 1860s. And if I throw out the date, what does the year 1833 mean to you? Probably not very much. But that's a year, something happened in 1833 that changed world history. And a paper was published in New York and London by a fellow called Wakefield. Wakefield, this is Wakefield's work. The fact that rich landowners were able to occupy large areas of property is because of the Wakefield theory principle, which was practiced across the British Empire. Wakefield basically followed up on Machiavelli from 1513, who followed up from the Roman model of colonization. So this is interesting because the map we're looking at, is a direct result of history. All those things have come down to us, and the reason we're living in Oak Bay and it looks like this is because of history. Before the tea room, of course, there were other buildings on Willows Beach.
Thank you. Just to go back on that last picture, we also have to keep in mind the date of 1843. You know the date of 1843, right? This is one of those questions. Any ideas?
Is that the arrival of the Beagle here?
Yes, yes. So that is when Sir James Douglas and his crew arrived on the shores, having been led by some of the other intrepid travelers. So if you take a look at this building, and you see this building, tell me what you see there. What do you see? What's the stories? They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, what are your 500 words on this one? A community, yes. What else? A forest, yes. What else? Shelter, yes. What else? Cooking or heat, yes. There's lots of ingenious things that are going on there. And we don't have the time to go into all the great and creative things that are going on there. But that is life. Now, where was that? Willows Beach. Excellent guess. But where else? Cattle Point. Okay. So these are some of the things that we'll expound on. Not today, though. Whoops, wrong way. Oh, there's that Pemberton there. Okay, we go the other way. Okay, so over here, again, you can see a picture of the Longhouse. Other fellow intrepid researcher here is also a strong kayaker, has been out and touring the area. And with that, he discovered on one of the maps and that there was actually longhouses on Todd Island. And so, again, a lot of people don't know that. The other interesting thing is he's told me that there's a sea bath there.
Swimming pool.
Swimming pool, yes. So, very interesting things about this area. So, yes, we would have longhouses set up around various places. Now, some of those longhouses weren't permanent dwellings. They were temporary dwellings. And they were used for certain seasons. Oh, I keep on going the wrong way, sorry. All right, so this wonderful picture here is of what the people might be doing. And there you can see one of the temporary structures. You can see the gentleman, and right behind him is one of the temporary structures. That temporary structure is actually bulrush mats. And it's a lean-to. Now, you can see the canoes there, but what were they harvesting? Good guesses. Fish. Can you see the fish? They're hanging up. So this picture was taken back in the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s. And the reason for that is some of the people wanted to chronicleize the First Nations and what they did, because First Nations people were on the decline at that point. So they wanted to chronicleize them. Now, this picture, this particular picture is over in Esquimalt. But this is one of the things that we would have done around here as well, more than likely over at the islands. And so this one is over in Esquimalt. Do you know where the entrance to Naden is? Yeah, they've got the gate there, and yeah, that's where that is. Push the right button. Aha, there we go. So what do you see there? Camas, excellent. And? Yeah, yeah, deer and cedar. So again, as you acknowledged, the territory, which is very, very, very appropriate. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This talks to the territory. So you can see Camas, and you're all well aware, and Oak Bay Parks has been doing a wonderful job in restoration. So Camas has been coming back. However, we're not just gatherers, we weren't just agricultural people, we also had to go hunting. So take a look at that upper picture there, and that is Mount Doug. And down below you see a deer. Okay. So with that, how many deer would live in 1 square mile of that forest that you see? 100, 4 or 5? 4 or 5, okay, yeah, yeah. Anybody else? There'd be cougars, exactly. Good, good, because cougars have a free run through there. It's like a freeway. Okay, so again, not many, because the deer are prey. Now, take a look closer at that picture. Use that studying eye, that horticultural eye that you all have, knowing about where deer, especially the ones over here in Oak Bay, because you've had some problems with them. What do they like to eat? Actually, no. Yes, they do. They like to eat the not the flower, but the stems. So, with that, what kind of food do you see under there? So, the answer? 1 deer in 1 square mile of that kind of area. That's all it could hold. Okay, now think of that. You have a whole village. Okay. Aha, and over here, what do we have? Eggs, exactly. Our scourge, we have a wonderful seagulls. So, when do they lay their eggs? Spring, exactly. When do other birds lay their eggs? Mostly spring. Exactly, good. Okay. So how often would we have eggs? Right.
Funny how that sentence struck me when Mark said that. We're standing looking at the islands and all the birds, and he said, yeah, we ate eggs once a year. And I had to stop. It stopped me. And it took a few seconds to work through, that's right. Yeah, and so not only knowledge, but understanding. Yeah, once a year, you have one opportunity to go and collect a portion of eggs. And so, yeah, one of those little points that stays with me. The tea room again. We're back to the tea room. Here, carefully hidden in plain view, is probably one of the most important pieces of Oak Bay history. It's the diagram. It's I'm trying to find out who drew it and where it came from. It's the BC Archaeological Branch. Probably the digs were in the 70s. We're guessing 80s. I don't know. They won't talk to me. So there we are. It's in the right place in the sense that if you stand there and there wasn't a tea room, you'll be looking at what you're seeing. The trouble is you actually can't see very much because you have to get past these cars, and then it has extremely reflective glass. And then if you try and peer through it, the sun is blinding you. But apart from that, hidden behind all that, I would argue, is a piece of Oak Bay history. These are the first Oak Bayers who've lived there for at least 3,000 years. And the trouble with archaeology is on coastlines, it gets washed away. So we've got 3,000 years at least. It's an actually wonderful piece of history. Now, this is the main part of it, which I photographed. You can tell the problems with reflection and shadows, but what I did there is trying to capture the plank houses, and Mark can comment on those again.
So the plank houses were, So the plank houses were unique to this area. Most of the houses that people will go and look at, and if you go down to the museum, Mungo Martin Longhouse, that doesn't represent us. It doesn't represent the Coast Salish. That's New Chonlith and Kwakwakwa peoples. This is what we had. We had a shed-style house. And if you remember from that other picture, they had some of the roof planks off to one side. Clever. Now, the other part of it is the way that these are constructed is we can take the planks off and move to another area, which is really great. There's usually one door in, one door out. Sometimes they had a little escape hatch. It was quite fascinating. Anyhow,
It's me.
with this, we can explain more if need be, but we'll leave that for a tour.
Please continue. There's someone online trying to get attention, but I'll come back to that in just a minute. But just continue, Mr. Albany.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so we've talked about basically a seagoing people. We rely on the coast. We rely on eggs on islands, deer in the forest. Moving around by canoe is an essential part of life. And so one can imagine the effect of being moved from these various villages on the coast into a small area of land in what's now Vic West. A catastrophic event in the life of the Songhees. And basically the competing interests are just incompatible. The original Oak Bayers needed travel, they needed seashores, islands, they needed freedom of movement. The settler plan is for land to farm, land to build on, and of course bays. See, bays are a problem because they waste land, so we fill them in, right? James Bay is no more. Gyro Park, Cabra Bay has been filled in and reclaimed, part of Ross Bay. So bays are essential for Indigenous people's survival and existence and lifestyle, and the settler plan really doesn't like bays very much. So what do we walk away from this? And we thought of lots of ideas, but we like this one. You can't go back and have a fresh start, but anyone can start now and have a better ending. Mark, any last words?
No, not that I can think of. I think that's really well.
Well, thank you so much for your patience, and we hope that we asked the question because that's the sort of thing would happen in the workshop. It makes us all think.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I take it this is sort of, as the tour goes on, the idea is to stop at different spaces and have this conversation about different spots. Is that the thinking?
Yeah.
Mr. Albany?
Yes. We'll go around the outskirts of Oak Bay here along the coast, and we'll stop at various places and give you some background as such and other linking things back and forth through history, but also how it came to affect people and the people who are here and ancestors, and what happened in a fairly short period of time.
Thank
And
you.
The conclusion of the quote tour, it's really not a tour, it's an experiential process. We realized that we can't just stop. The idea at this time is to have a neutral place where we stop to have a, lack of a better word, a light lunch, but it's really a mingling and discussion and wind down workshop. So we don't just experience things and then quit. So that's the rough plan.
Thank you. There's a hand up online. I just want to make sure if there's any kind of technical issues. This area isn't for public input, but Dr. Gunderson, I see your hand up there. Is there any issue here that you're having?
Yeah, about halfway through the screening, the sharing of the screen stopped. So all the pictures you all were talking about disappeared. And I couldn't write it in the chat because the chat's disabled. I didn't mean to be rude by saying, excuse me. I was just trying to have you all show us all the things you were seeing, and we lost it about halfway through.
Okay, it's showing up on my Zoom, so I wonder if it's an issue with the YouTube feed, perhaps? I'm not sure, but thank you. We'll make sure that when we
We
archive
were
this,
seeing it
it's...
at the beginning on the Zoom. I'm on the actual Zoom, and then it just disappeared.
Okay. I'm not sure why that would be. It is, I'm on the Zoom as well here on my thing, and it's showing up here, so I'm not sure what the technical issue is, but we will archive this, so if you wish to go back and look at it, for anybody looking, if that happened to anybody online, the full version with the thing should be captured okay, so we'll...
Thank you. I'll
make
go
sure
back
that
and
goes
look
on.
at
Thank
it
you.
later. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem, thank you. Any other sort of questions before we go here? Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Just a question on process. We said that we suspended the formality of the meeting. Is it possible to take any comments or questions from the public that came to attend the meeting or not?
I think today's just really for this. This is a sneak peek for us to hear this. Certainly, if anybody wishes to send notes, that'd be welcome. I would just like to, if there's any other pieces here, I really want to just express my appreciation. And it's got to be hard to stand up here and sort of try and tell each other stories and to create that sort of narrative in those pieces. And really appreciate that that approach to the overview. Is there anything else? Anybody else wishes to kind of chime in here before we let them go? Councillor Smart?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I guess my question is just, and I don't know if it's formalized or certain yet, but what sort of the outcome will be after the experience that could then be shared with the community, if there had been any thoughts as to how this lives on.
Ms. Williams?
Thank you, Your Worship. The thought from the team was once we've completed the tour with the inaugural participants, Council will then have an opportunity to talk to our First Nations neighbours, to the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, and to talk about what would their vision be for this moving forward and how could we share this out to the broader community or communities. So that'll be a decision point for Council and the First Nations as soon as we finish the tour. Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Albany. Really fantastic to have that little, not little, don't use any diminutive words here, that very lovely overview of a snapshot of a part of Oak Bay that we all know very, very well, at least in recent history. So thank you for that. Any opposed, none opposed? Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. And Ms. Williams is going to walk them out, but I will move on here to our next. I just have a mayor's remarks. Just very briefly, I'll just say sort of our end of our spring and summer session here. So we'll be meeting again in September. I just want to express my appreciation for council, all of the work they do here, but also in all of the various committees and everything else they do offline from here. Amazing amount of work and energy that goes into serving our broader community. But also to staff who will be continuing to work through the summer and have a a large load of work for us to consider as part of our governance role come the fall when we get back to this table. So we don't expect any more meetings in August, though we always have the ability to call a special meeting if absolutely required. So all I wanted to say was just thank you. Councillor? I know. So moving on to section 3 point, I think actually I have my numbering wrong here. I do. So 3.4 is the, oh, wait a second. Yeah. Sorry, I numbered mine previously on the pieces here, so my apologies. Yep, I'm just going to make sure I get this right. Yep, so we have 3.4, so zoning amendment 291 King George Terrace. If I may, is that Mr. McStravick? Please go ahead. Oh, sorry, and Councillor Smart, I know you previously recused yourself, so you think you have to do the same again?
Yeah, thank you. I wish to recuse myself since I have recused myself previously from this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Just step into the committee room. I don't think this is going to take us very long, so we'll call you right back in as soon as this is done. This is subject to public hearing. This is the one item on the agenda that is. So if anybody wishes to address council on 291 King George Terrace zoning amendments, please put up your hand online or stand up in the room when the time comes. Go ahead, Mr. McStravick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Council is being asked to consider an application for a zoning bylaw amendment for the property located at 291 King George Terrace, as was mentioned. The applicant's request to rezone the subject property from R4, a one-family residential, to a new site-specific zone to permit a 3-lot subdivision which would be developed with 3 new single-family homes, at least one of which would be built with a secondary rental suite on it. Council previously considered this application on the 10th of June, and that evening they passed a resolution directing staff to draft a bylaw which would rezone the subject property to a new comprehensive development zone to facilitate the proposed residential subdivision. That bylaw has been drafted and is included in the agenda package for this evening. Council further directed staff to work with the applicants to draft a covenant under Section 219 of the Land Title Act, which would secure certain aspects of the proposal, including a community amenity contribution, certain green building features, and restrictions on the density of development on the new lots under consideration. The staff report that Council has received tonight explains that the covenant has been drafted and that the district is in receipt of a letter of undertaking from the applicant's lawyer committing to register the covenant as soon as possible. However, just this morning, staff received confirmation that the covenant has now been registered on title for the subject property. So, contrary to the information contained in the staff report, the letter of undertaking is no longer necessary. Therefore, all conditions established on Council's June 10th resolution have been satisfied, so there is no impediment to Council giving the bylaw final adoption tonight, should that be their will. Subsequent to bylaw adoption, a development permit would be brought forward to Council for consideration at a future meeting to authorize development within the shoreline and infill residential development permit areas prior to the application proceeding for subdivision. And the applicant, Christopher Walker, is here tonight. Should Council have any questions? And I will end it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. McStravick. Are there any questions? And just for anybody watching this wondering if this is going to be strangely short for a complicated land use application, I think as Mr. McStravick pointed out, this came before council some time ago. It's gone through some consideration and been given direction to move forward subject to these other pieces. So I understand tonight we could do adoption as well this evening if that was the will of council. Okay, perfect. Are there any questions? So procedurally here we'll have questions of council to the applicant or to staff. After that we'll go to public input if anybody from the public wishes to address council on the application. We'll come back to this table and we'll consider any of the motions on the floor. So with that, any questions of council? Okay, then out to the public. Is there anybody here or online who wishes to speak to council on this application? Not seeing anybody or any hands poking up here or online. Just double checking on my, nope.
I'll move receipt.
So thank you, moved, seconded, thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed, none opposed?
I'll move that. Council give first and second reading to zoning bylaw amendment bylaw number 4878/2024 for the property located at 291 King George Terrace.
Seconded, thank you. Any discussion? We usually have any discussion at second reading. Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
And I'll move that council give third reading
Can you read the whole
and
thing?
adoption? or
No, third reading. And
third
then-
reading?
Yep.
To zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw number 4878, 2024 for the property located at 291 King George Terrace.
Seconded, thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? If you wish to make a motion for adoption as well.
And I'll move that council adopt zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw number 4878, 2024 for the property located at 291 King George Terrace.
Moved and seconded, thank you. Discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. It's completed. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 3.5, we have 4 core fire unification strategic initiatives. We have Chief McDonald online, if there's any questions. And if there, if there's any questions, first, we really have to receive the report. That's the primary piece of this, but there's also an ask there of us to consider. And so I might make some suggestions as to what we might do as a thing, but I'm curious to hear from council if there's any particular course of action that council wishes to see come out of this. I think as noted in the memo, there's some lack of clarity exactly what is being asked for, but we can either take that away for additional clarity, or if we want to give some more clear direction from our perspective, we can do that as well. Ms. Williams or Mr. Chief McDonald, anything else you wish to add to the memo? No. Okay. Letter from Salish to our council, so for us to take.
Move receipt.
Moved and seconded for receipt. I'm going to just take a chance for discussion on that. We're obviously going to receive it, but a chance for people to kind of talk a little bit about what next steps might be. Councillor Green.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the reports and the letters. And what are the implications for staffing in Oak Bay with this kind of approach? Just a question in terms of recruitment, retention. Will we retain our same complement? So what are the implications from an HR perspective? Thank you.
Sure, thank you. And I'm going to go over to Chief McDonald. I will note there's sort of two asked and worded two different ways. One talks to a unification of fire departments. One talks to a fire service integration opportunities, and they're not necessarily the same thing. So I think part of the lack of clarity is that piece. So
And I apologize, I didn't go through you to the chief. Sorry, Chief McDonald.
No, it's fine. It's fine. You can direct the questions to me, and I'll redirect them. But just that's part of this piece. But Chief McDonald, as best you can, perhaps you can answer that question.
Thank you, Worship. As you indicate, there are definitely significant differences between unification and amalgamation. The fire chiefs within the Corps and the 4 CAOs within the Corps actually have a meeting coming up on August 28th, where we will be collectively talking about what opportunities outlined in the letter are, as well as trying to get some additional clarification from Salish. So can't really provide any firm direction on what any staffing impacts are, other than there are opportunities to collaborate with our neighbors here.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Worship, and probably through you to the Chief. Just, I think, picking up exactly where the Chief was, I guess, would the Chief be able to comment, again, the distinct difference between functional integration and unification, unify. The letter from Salish uses the word unify. And so I just wonder whether the Chief might expand on how that conversation about specific, we've heard much and really positive information about sort of service integration and how services can support each other, but I'm not sure we've ever had a brief or a discussion about the specific unifying thing. Salish refers to unify as a strategic objective of their council in their letter, which I did not actually know was the case, but to what extent has the conversation specifically about unification from a philosophical point of view taken place, and recognizing that's more of a governance decision, but how does that conversation happen at the chief level?
Chief McDonald.
Thank you, through His Worship. So that's a very challenging question. So without clear direction from council to embark on conversations like that, the bulk of our conversations within the Fire Services Committee, which is outlined in the 4 core mutual aid agreement, really primarily focuses on coordination of operational opportunities. You know, more practically speaking, the standardization of operational guidelines, where we can, on the procurement side of things, try and get alignment of resources. It's really focusing at that level at this point. So we haven't really got into, sort of consolidation or unification without direction from council at this point.
Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Worship. And maybe if I might just follow that up with probably a question to Ms. Williams. Does that occur at the CAO level at all? And a corollary to that is, this seems to me that if this were to be, and council, to my knowledge, has not discussed this item specifically as part of the strategic planning process, but were it to be raised as a direction, it would probably be discussed at a strategic planning, during the strategic planning cycle for council.
Ms. Williams?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. That is correct, Councillor Appleton. At this point at the CAO level, we're not having those conversations for exactly the reasons that the fire chief just iterated. Staff would not entertain those kinds of governance conversations without direction from council. But if council were seeking to consider that kind of direction, the strategic priority setting session would be the one to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to Chief McDonald. I noted, Chief, that in the Saanich supporting documentation, it refers to this creates a framework to support common and collective approaches to areas including training, procurement of apparatus and equipment, and development of shared operational guidelines. It leaves me wondering how each of the areas differ significantly. I guess I have been of the opinion that there's kind of some overarching development of a framework that all fire departments need to operate by. So I'm just wondering if you could share with us perhaps some of the differences between, say, Oak Bay's fire department operational procedures versus, say, Saanich or the City of Victoria.
Chief McDonald?
Through His Worship to Councillor Patterson. So some of the significant differences is scope sizes between the different departments, as well as just different dispatch providers. So we all have similar operational guidelines, but that we utilize to manage safe and effective operations for individual departments. Where we can, we definitely try and work on getting alignment with them. But when we've got different dispatch providers, obviously there are gaps that occur. We all utilize the Crest radio system. However, we are on different radio frequencies, as well as through the dispatch providers. There are gaps. So it's hard to get into a great degree of detail about what the more practical impacts of what some of the changes are without really getting into the weeds of it. But hopefully that's a bit of a high level on what some of the changes are, as well as some of the different equipment that departments have, as well as the specialty training that different departments have within the region, such as confined space, high angle, tower crane rescue, marine. So there's those sorts of factors as well.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of council? So I think there's a couple of options here. I think, as Councillor Appleton alluded to, we could have some direction to include this as a potential piece in our strategic priorities. You could direct myself, I think, either just bring this matter back after the CAOs and fire chiefs have had their conversation to see if there's some more clarity that comes out of that. You could direct me to do one of a couple of things. One would be to possibly write or just reach out to other mayors to understand where this sits on their priorities and what it means to them, or write more formally to ask them to whether they would be willing to include that as part of their strategic priorities, so we can get a sense of where the other bodies line up. There's a few pieces here. Probably the more formal ask of other people to do something is probably better to wait till after the CAOs and fire chiefs have that conversation. We might have a bit more information to inform that. But there's certainly, anyway, those are the thoughts I had that were some potential moves forward with this. And of course, if we don't feel like it's worth exploring at this time, we certainly have lots of other priorities at the moment. We're not going to kick off any direct explorations at this point, but if it's something that council is interested in understanding the scope of the ask and potentially directing some staff resources to looking into it, then probably some direction from here, but more than just receiving it is probably appropriate, even if it's as simple as asking this matter to be brought back in the fall after the staff meetings. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I would like to request, or I would make a motion that the mayor be requested to communicate with the District of Salish with the understanding, so I would make this motion with the understanding that such correspondence would be issued after the chiefs and after the operational level would have the opportunity to have the discussions that would be relevant to that conversation. I think what I might move is that the mayor be requested to write to, I guess in this case, respond to the mayor of the District of Salish to clarify specifically the intent of their strategic initiative 2.2.3, regional efforts to unify the 4 core fire departments to better service residents. To clarify the component of what is intended by unify, and also what outcomes in terms of better service were intended beyond the existing conversation on functional integration of shared fire services. So it's that there's part of a motion in there and part of communicating to staff what might be included, Your Worship. But thank you. The intent being, I think what we would like, what I would like to hear clarification on is what precisely, when District of Salish Council created that strategic initiative, what was their vision for Unify? And also, again, what is the outcome desired for better service for residents that isn't already covered by the existing functional service integration pieces that the chiefs and staff are already discussing, if that's clear, Your Worship?
I take it as very clear. The motion I have is to be immediately to reach out to Salish to clarify the intent of this special initiative, or whatever it was, the initiative 2.2.3, and then I took it as the context of that, specifically on the wording of unify and better service and those pieces. So I can certainly do that. I can do it probably informally before they meet, and then more formally after we have some guidance from the leadership team. Councillor Green.
Thank you. And it's not an amendment. I agree with the motion. I'll be supporting it. My question is, or my request is that I also would hope that because we're the smallest, sometimes you get swallowed. And so I just want to make sure that our needs and our outcomes for our community are expressed. And that, yeah, what is the difference between unification and integration, if they could clarify those terms? I really agree with Councillor Appleton. It's that they're very different. And what are the potential impacts on the service to our own community in that? So.
Okay, thank you very much. I didn't see any other hands on this, so I have a motion on the floor.
2 motions on the floor. Did we move receipt already?
I did not. We moved receipt. I apologize. I'm going to just split these two motions because I did not call the question on the receipt, so my apologies. I'm going to call the question on the receipt at this point. So all those in favor of receipt? None opposed? Thank you. Then I'm going to move this motion back on the floor from Councillor Appleton. Doesn't matter who seconded it. There's a couple of hands popped up. So we've had a discussion. Councillor Watson.
Yes, if I may, I do have a question about moving this motion forward in relation to the work that the staff at the senior level are setting out to do, and whether they don't actually end up tripping over each other. Because if you, to some extent, if you got an answer to that question later tonight that made things clear to us, this further work that the fire chiefs and the CAOs were about to undertake might not be necessary. What I'm not clear from what's come from Salish is if they just haven't shared enough information with us in order for us to understand what this initiative what their strategic initiative is, and whether we might be creating extra work here that's not actually required. If it has to be done this formally, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, it's a fair question. Here's my take on this, and take it for what it's worth. I take them as parallel tasks. I think the work happening at the CAO level and the fire chiefs is valuable work. I don't know that level of upper level management and fire leadership has really happened that frequently in the past. So I think that conversation about how they're operationally looking at fire services is valuable no matter what. So I think that going ahead is fantastic. I think the question from their, as Chief McDonald pointed out, there's really no path for staff to look at something more than that without a political direction. And so I would see my letter from our communication council to council as being clarification of the political direction. What was the intent of that politically? Was that really to look at unification, in which case that would come back to us and we'd have to consider how we would even consider that question really. We could get a staff report to inform that. We would look at it, start the process externally to look at that. Those would be sort of questions to look at, but I think just some clarification on both sides is valuable. But I do think they can be parallel just processes at this point because they think they both have value. That's my take of how I see it.
And yeah, and just to follow up then, so I imagine this would be CC'd to the other two councils, right? It's a question of Saanich because they initiated the process here or the discussion, and then we just let the other two councils know that we're making that overture for clarification. Is that right? That
I
how it would work?
that would probably be an appropriate process, yeah. Okay. I will then call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to that conversation. I think it's incumbent upon us to always look at these things regionally. We go to then 3.6, which is our procedural correction that we apparently, my apologies. In the meeting, I didn't capture the order of pieces. So essentially our staff recommendation here is to be clarify that we want those changes added. As noted in the staff report, are there any questions? I expect a letter of chastisement from my members of council after this.
So I'll move receipt.
Right, moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? I don't think so. We can just move this.
I'll just move the staff recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion on that at this point? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Thank you for catching that. I don't envy you having to go back and listen to that over and over again to see where we did or did not move or make the motion. That concludes. Again, I'll repeat what I said earlier. Thanks everybody for a great spring summer session. Lots and lots of work, particularly on housing. Mr. Green, since you're the one person left here to represent, thank you so much. So I can have a motion to close under section 90, subsection 1C and 1I, L.
So moved.
Moved and seconded? No, that's fine. Thank you. We can just take that as a piece. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? That'll wrap up our online Zoom piece and we'll step into the in-camera. Thank you, everyone.